Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this session, Tools of Empowerment for Family Caregivers, Education, Resources, Support, and Self-Care. My name is Andrew Bertignoli. I'm a member of the board of NAMI, California, from the San Francisco area. So I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today, Saundra Boyd. From the Caregivers Nurse Consultancy. She's a caregiver nurse consultant, rather, at Caregivers Haven. She is a leader and the founder of Caregivers Haven, and she's devoted most of her adult life to reaching out to others who are challenged with the responsibility of providing care for those with a mental health diagnosis or other chronic illness. She shares her lived experiences by providing education, support, and resources for other family caregivers who are experiencing the stress of this situation. Her goal is to empower family members and caregivers to care for their loved ones and utilize self-care strategies. Professionally, she has worked as a registered nurse for over 38 years, caring for others, but has really been a caregiver since the age of 10 when her mother suffered a traumatic brain injury. Saundra is committed to sharing her compassion for people by supporting them in their caregiving journey. And today, Saundra will be sharing with us her lived experience and professional insights as a registered nurse, as well as her passion for helping other caregivers. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Saundra.
All right. Thank you, Andrew, for that introduction. I am honored to be here. I'm excited to be here. It's always nice to be around a community of people who are experiencing the same challenges that you're experiencing. So I'm really, really happy to be here. So if we were in person and we didn't have to worry about a virus, pandemic, and if you were comfortable in doing so, I would have you turn to your neighbor and hug them and tell them you are not alone. But since we're not in person and we can't do that, we're going to do it online. So I want everyone to look right into their camera, whether you're on your phone or computer, and just on the count of 3, we're going to say, you are not alone. So 1, 2, 3, you are not alone. It's just so important that we all understand that. And then the second thing I want you to do is just hug yourself, put your arms around yourself and give yourself a big hug and say, I am not alone on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, I am not alone. One of the things in my caregiving journey that has really helped is knowing that I'm not alone. You know, mental illness, the behavior, all the trauma, it can be like so traumatizing for us. And because of stigma, we just hold it all in. We don't tell anyone. We think this bizarre behavior is only happening in our house. And so a lot of times we feel very, very lonely. So I just want to start off with reminding you that you're not alone. We have this great NAMI community who is here to help everyone. So just want to throw that out there. So the next thing I want to know is how many of you are caregivers of someone with a mental illness? You can put that in the chat and just put yes if you are. And then I want to know, is there anyone here who's not sure if they're a caregiver? And if that's you, put a question mark in the chat. And some of you may be wondering, why am I asking that question? You know, how can someone not know that they're a caregiver? But I actually had someone ask me that question before. They asked me, am I a caregiver? And the reason for that is because a lot of times we're caring for a parent or an adult child or an adult grandchild or an adult sibling. And so in our minds, we're just doing what we're supposed to do as a family, right? We're just continuing on family, taking care of family. And so we just don't look at it as anything other than that. And a lot of times when we look at it like that, a lot of people feel like there's no end in sight. Like, I'm just, oh my gosh, I'm going to be doing this forever, because they're looking at it as just taking care of that family. But I want to suggest to you that you kind of look at it different. You know, when you're taking care of an adult child, that's like above and beyond your average responsibility, right? That's a little bit more. If you're taking care of an adult grandchild, that's not your average responsibility. If you're taking care of a parent at the age of 10, as in my case, that's not the average responsibility of a 10-year-old. And so when you look at it as, I'm taking care of an adult child, I'm taking care of a parent, I'm taking care of a grandchild, and I'm a caregiver, then that looks a little bit different. When you look at it as an additional role, it gives you a different perspective. And I think at that point, it helps people to ask for help. It helps people to reach out for support when you look at it as an additional role, not just I'm taking care of my family. This is what I'm supposed to do. It just helps help you ask for support. So I just wanted to put that out there for you, just to give you something to think about as we get started here. So I'm going to open up my PowerPoint, share my screen with you. So today we will be talking about tools of empowerment for family caregivers, education, resources, support, and self-care. And so, but before I go into that, I want to talk to you about something else. So a lot of times when I go to conferences, I'm always like, oh, I wonder if they're going to talk about this, or I wonder if they're going to talk about that. You know, I'm like always already wondering what they're going to talk about. So before I go into that, I'm going to talk about 3 things that I'm not going to talk about. So the first thing I'm not going to talk about is science. So as you heard in my bio, I'm a registered nurse. I'm a healthcare professional. So a lot of times we talk about a whole lot of sciencey stuff, statistics, data, graphs, chemistry, biology, pathophysiology. We talk about all that stuff. Today, I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you from my heart. I'm going to be sharing with you my lived experiences. Today, I'm going to be talking to you as a fellow caregiver. So no sciencey talk today. The second thing I'm not going to talk about is a magic cure. You know, sometimes people are hoping that someone will have like the answer to their burning question of how do we get rid of this illness? And I don't have that. I'm waiting for the next Einstein or genius to be born who can crack this mental health code and get rid of this illness, or find some medications without all the side effects, just like you guys are. I don't have the magic pill. I remember a couple of months ago in my support group, though, I remember saying, I wish I had a magic wand that I can tap all of our loved ones on the shoulder and their illness would miraculously disappear. But I don't have that magic wand, so we won't be talking about a cure today. The third thing we won't be talking about is perfection. You know, a lot of times we think if we do all things perfectly, then our loved one is going to be perfect. You know, we're going to give those medications on time. We're going to make every single doctor appointment. We're going to take great care of them and love them. But you know what? Episodes still happen. Psychosis still happens. It's like, even whether we do it perfectly or not, things are going to still happen. So don't beat yourself up. Just do your best. You know, I use these tools of empowerment every day, but I still have pity parties. There are some days when I'm like, did I do something wrong? Is there something more I could have done? Did I cause this? Even though I've been told numerous times the answer is no, there are still times when I kind of go there because I did something perfect, but it didn't come out perfect, or I didn't do something perfect and something happens. So don't dwell on perfection. A lot of people say, oh, you know what? You're a nurse and your husband's a therapist. So you guys probably have everything perfect at your house. You guys probably do everything just right. No, that is not the case. We don't. And I think a lot of times, because we are both healthcare professionals, we probably have a lot more disagreements and we end up like this couple here on the screen, you know, because I know my way of doing it and he knows his way of doing it. And sometimes they align, but sometimes they don't. And so there is no perfection in our house, even though a lot of people think that. But again, we just try to do our best every day. So why am I doing this presentation? Why am I an advocate? Why did I start a business for caregivers? Why do I even care? Because I'm retired. I could be at home relaxing, minding my own business. So why am I even here? There's several reasons for that. And one of the biggest reasons is I was very frustrated with the discharge process that our loved one had after their first hospitalization. You know, I've been a nurse a long time and I've discharged a lot of patients, and we give them discharge instructions, you know, things to do once they get home. And so I was really shocked when our loved one was discharged and the social worker called and said, come pick them up. So I went to pick them up. And I got there and she gave me a stack of papers and said, okay, I made their psychiatry appointment and their therapist appointment. It's in 3 weeks, make sure they go. So I'm like standing there, like waiting for some more instructions. And that's all she said. And I was like, well, what else can we do? Like, this is new for us. I don't know what to do. And she said, well, like I said, make sure they make their appointments. And I mean, well, give them their meds, of course. And I'm like, okay. And I guess because I was standing there with a blank look on my face, she offered, well, you can call NAMI, maybe they can help you. And then she writes his number on a piece of paper, hands it to me, and walks away. And I'm standing there like, who's NAMI? Are they a person, place, or thing? I had never heard of NAMI. I didn't know who they were. And she didn't say they're the National Alliance on Mental Illness. She just said, call NAMI. And then she said, maybe they can help you. So now I'm like, maybe, like, what if they can't help me? It was horrible. It was just the worst thing ever. And so because of that, I just didn't know what to do. I felt like I wanted the truth, and I felt like she wasn't giving me the truth. And so I wanted someone to tell me, your life is about to be turned upside down right now. Your loved one may never be the same. This could be a lifelong journey. Like, the truth. No one told me that. I did get the truth, but it was like probably 3 months later. Our loved one was in and out of the hospital, that first hospitalization, just trying to get stabilized. And then they were sent to an outpatient program, which was another, I think maybe 2 months or something. So it's probably like a good 3 months, if not longer, that I finally talked to a doctor. And the doctor told me the truth. He told me that this could possibly be a lifelong illness. They may be on medications for the rest of their life. He told me the truth. And so I said, okay, well, what can we do to have the best prognosis as possible, the best outcome as possible? And he said, make sure they make all of their psychiatry appointments, therapy appointments, make sure they take their, excuse me, just a second, sorry. Make sure they take their medications on time, make sure they have a calm home environment, and make sure that they have strong family support. Okay, got it. So finally, some instructions, something I can hold on to, like an action plan. But it was like 3 months later, and I kept feeling like I need help, like now. Like, what am I going to do? And so he helped me see that I can start doing these things now. But it was like 3 months later that I finally talked to him. And so I just I started my own quest for finding out what to do. I started reading and asking questions. And fortunately, I worked at a hospital. I didn't work at the psychiatric hospital, but I worked at a hospital where I could ask a lot of questions. I talked to a lot of the doctors and nurses over at the psych hospital. We have a medical library at the hospital. So I just started looking for answers for anything that I could find. And then I did eventually go to, so that's one of the main reasons, that discharge process, it just made me want to advocate, because I was like, this is not right. We need more than just, go see a psychiatrist. So the second thing was, eventually I started going to support groups, and the parents there are just struggling, or parents, grandparents, just caregivers in general, struggling, trying to figure this out. And one day I was there, and one of the moms was just crying and crying, and I just felt like I wanted to help her. At the end, I went and hugged her and gave her my phone number. And I just felt like they didn't have the same resources that I had. Like, I'm a nurse. I've studied psychiatry. I've studied a lot of things, and I work at the hospital, so I have a lot of resources. But these family members don't have all that, and they don't seem comfortable with speaking to the doctor and asking questions. And so I think it was during that night I made a decision that I just wanted to do something else to help them. I just had this passion to help all of these family members. And so my baby sister had been talking to me even before that. She's like, you can help so many other people. You have so much knowledge and so much experience in this mental health realm, but you're still working at the hospital, being all stressed out. Why don't you start your own business and help these people? And so between me being at a support group and just seeing these families who felt like I did at the beginning, so helpless and hopeless and confused, just seeing them the way that I was and knowing that they needed help. And then a little push from my baby sister, that's how my business was born. And that's why I'm doing this presentation. In addition to being a caregiver since the age of 10, which, did I know I was a caregiver at the age of 10? Absolutely not. But I was, and just all of the experience I've had over my whole life, I just felt like I wanted to help people. And so my business is Caregivers Haven, and it's a community dedicated to family caregivers of the mentally ill, just to try to empower you and show you all of the education and resources, show you a better way than just being at home sad about your situation. So that's why I'm here. And so, you know, the first slide said we're going to talk about tools of empowerment, of education, resources, support, and self-care. But specifically, we're going to be talking about how to get educated, where to find resources, where to find support, and how to maintain your peace of mind using self-care. So education, you can read, ask questions, go to classes, and then read some more. But education is so important because it helps you understand your loved one's illness. And that's huge. And then once you understand it, you can share it with other people. You know, the more people that we educate about mental illness, the less stigma will happen. And we need to just be out there educating ourselves, educating others. When you get educated, you'll understand the illness, you'll understand some of the symptoms, you'll understand why they're doing some of the things that they're doing. You'll understand the side effects of the medication, so you can kind of help look out for things that are happening. And that's huge in helping you on your caregiving journey and helping you to take care of your loved ones safely. That will help you. You know, I've heard a lot of parents say, oh, you know, the kid's just lazy. That's why they won't work and go to school. No, they have a serious mental illness. And whether it's from the symptoms from the illness or from the side effects of the medication, they're not able to work or go to school right now. That's what's going on. Or, oh, they're being manipulative. One day they won't do this and the next day they won't do that. And they just came out of the hospital and they're taking meds, they should be okay. Well, no, sometimes it takes those medications a while to get into their system and stabilize them. So see, once you're getting educated, you'll know all these things, and then it will help you have more patience and more empathy for your loved one, instead of thinking maybe they're, you know, being mean or manipulative. So all of those things are the reasons why it's important to get educated. So one of the ways to get educated is to read, but I would suggest that you find reputable sources. And you can find reputable sources from your doctor's office. They usually have pamphlets there. They usually have articles. Or if you go online, you can find websites from, I would recommend government websites or university websites where you know they've done some research and there's some evidence behind what they're saying, not just hearsay. You know, I try to read pamphlets from the things that I get from support groups or from the doctor's office. I also read articles that are peer-reviewed or scholarly articles. Like if you Google something, try to find a peer-reviewed or scholarly article, because those articles will have some research behind them. It won't be just a whole lot of hearsay. And then ask questions. So this is really hard because a lot of people don't like to ask questions. And I would start with your doctor, because your doctor he's the one taking care of your loved one. The doctor has given the diagnosis, has prescribed the medications, so they can educate you on all of that. You can start there. One of the things of being a nurse is I talk to doctors every day, but I realize a lot of family members are not comfortable talking to doctors, but I encourage you to talk to them. Most doctors are going to be supportive of you asking questions. You know, I've heard a lot of family members say, oh, they changed my loved one's meds, but we don't even know why. Ask the doctor why. It's okay to ask him. Or I've heard people say, well, the doctor said all this stuff and I kind of don't understand what they were saying. Ask him. Just say, you know what, doctor, can you repeat that? I didn't really understand what you said. Can you explain it to me in a way that I can understand? It's okay to ask that. And it's important to ask that. One of the things I recommend is getting a release of information from your loved one. And I recommend doing this when they're well and in a good mood. Don't ask them like when they're irritable or in psychosis or just out of the hospital. But if you get a release of information, you can talk to their doctor, you can ask questions, you can go to their doctor appointments with them. And all of this is if your loved one says it's okay, of course. But you can become a part of that healthcare team. So, you know, there's the doctor and the therapist and the nurse and your loved one and the family caregiver can be part of that healthcare team. And the doctors usually like this because you can give them insight on what's going on at home that your loved one is probably not going to tell them. So it's huge to be a part of that healthcare team. I just ask that you get permission from your loved one first, of course, and then this is not for you to go to the doctor appointment and then take over the whole conversation and, you know, over talk your loved one. That's not it at all. It's just for you to be able to assist in the treatment plan that the doctor is giving. It's just to help you give him some more information, more insight. Because a lot of times our loved ones will go to the doctor and I know our loved one does this, oh, everything's fine, when maybe last week they had an episode. And so when I'm there, I'm just like, oh yeah, they're doing great. However, last week, this and this and this happened. You know, it just helps a doctor be able to know if, hey, this medication treatment plan is working, or maybe we need to make some adjustments. But the biggest thing is, don't be afraid to talk to the doctor. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to go ask for a second opinion. The doctors, I'm sure there might be some outline, but most doctors will welcome your input. So another source for education is going to classes and conferences. Just like you're here today, this NAMI conference, you know, conferences are usually 1 to 2 days, and you can get a wealth of education and information from going to conferences. I've just learned a lot about going to conferences. The other thing is meet the doctor. A lot of the communities will have workshops with meet the doctor. And so they'll usually have like a psychiatrist, a therapist, and pharmacist. And so families can go and ask questions and get an answer right then and there. And one of the things I like about it is, let's say I go and I only have 2 questions, but even though I only have 2 questions, I learn so much because all the other family members are asking questions that maybe I didn't think about. And so you hear all of their questions, and then you hear all of the answers from the psychiatrist for those questions. So it can be very, very educational. So I recommend you finding out if your community holds any of these meet the doctor workshops. And then classes. The third way is classes. So when the lady first told me, the social worker first told me about NAMI, when I contacted NAMI and they told me about their family to family class, it was like a year before I could take the class, because between the way their classes started and then my schedule at work, it was a whole year before I took that class. But let me tell you, when I took the class, it was so eye-opening for me. When I took it, it was a 12-week in-person class, and it was so educational. I learned more even than probably I did in nursing school, because the class is taught from the caregiver point of view. And then they also have a peer-to-peer class for the peer to go to. The class was awesome. I cannot speak more about it. I learned things about my mom's TBI that I didn't learn like 50 years ago, that her doctor never told us in this class. It was just, I mean, I can't say more about it. It was just awesome, awesome. I've actually taken the class twice. I took it again this year, and this year was an 8-week virtual class, but I learned even more stuff. You know, they talk about the diagnosis, they talk about the medications, they teach you how to have a conversation with your loved one. It's just so informational. So I recommend, if you have the opportunity, to take the NAMI family to family class. Okay, so our next tool of empowerment is resources. I'm sorry, resources. And so I have a couple of resources up here, but it's kind of hard sometimes to find resources because the mental health laws are different, like city to county to state. And so sometimes someone may tell you about a class or a resource, and then you look for it and you don't have it in your community. So sometimes they can be hard to find, but you can find them, and I encourage you to find them. Again, it can help alleviate a lot of your fear, frustration, and hopelessness that you have. One of the first resources I want to talk about is having a crisis intervention plan. And this is something you can develop at your own house, and if you just write it on a piece of paper or type it up. And I recommend that you write 911 at the top as a first item. Like literally write CALL 911. I'm going to tell you why in just a minute, but write 911. So on this plan, you would include things like the psychiatrist's name and phone number, the therapist's name and phone number, the numbers to the crisis intervention team, the phone number and address to your nearest psych hospital, if you have a mental health urgent care, things like that. And I would also encourage you to include a patient safety plan. And a patient safety plan is a plan that's filled out by your loved one. And it's something that can help them manage their thoughts and their feelings and their behavior before it goes out of control. And so they'll fill things out and include things like, these are the things that trigger me, or these are the things that help keep me calm when I was very anxious. And so they write it down. And so if something's happening, they can pull that out and look at it and be like, oh, okay, you know, maybe I can try some of these. Or the family member can have a copy. And if they see something starting to happen, they can pull it out and say, hey, you know what, maybe you want to go for a walk, or hey, maybe you want to go take a shower. So that's really good to include in your crisis intervention plan. So the reason I said to put 911 at the top of the paper is because it sounds very simple and it sounds very easy, but sometimes it's not. So when our loved one has had 2 psychotic breaks, two hospitalizations, and with the second one, I was with them by myself. And it happened so quick and the behavior was so bizarre, I froze. Like, there was no fight or flight. I was literally frozen in place, like a deer in the headlights, frozen in place. And when I finally snapped out of it, it turned out it was only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. So I snapped out of it and I'm, oh my God, where's my phone? I'm looking for my phone. I'm rolling around. I'm trying to keep them safe. I'm trying to find my phone. And then I was like, do I call 911 or do I call the crisis intervention team? Oh no, maybe I have to call 911 to call the crisis intervention team. Oh no, the crisis intervention team is on that paper that I wrote on. Well, where's that paper? Like, I was a hot mess. I could not figure out what to do. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I was so shocked, because as you heard, in my bio, I've been a nurse actually now over 39 years. And my whole entire career, I worked in highly intense, highly stressful areas. I started off in pediatric ICU, and then I worked in neonatal ICU for over 30 years. So I've been to numerous cardiac arrests, respiratory arrests, crash C-sections, lots of medical emergencies. I know how to respond to emergency. And then the last 8 years that I worked at the hospital, I was an informatics nurse. I worked in the IT department and I was a downtime coordinator. So we were responsible for our huge medical center and then a whole separate psychiatric hospital. And then I don't remember 9 or 10, maybe 12 outside clinics. When the computers went down, it was up to me to immediately grab a team, gather up a team, and get that computer system back up. So my whole point, I've worked in emergencies my whole life, but on this day, the day that this happened, I froze. I could not function. And when I did finally pick up the phone and call someone, I called my husband. I still never called 911. He ended up having to deal with all that when he got here. But this is why I say, write it down, CALL 911, because when a crisis happens, you don't know what you're going to do. I certainly did not think I would ever have responded like that. So just be prepared. So in addition to a crisis intervention plan, other resources are your doctor. You know, doctors usually have pamphlets and things at their office that they can give you for resources. And also they can give you, they have resources for other places. And we actually had a psychiatrist who referred us to another clinic because he said the clinic could help our loved one more. They had more resources, more programs. And he could have just kept taking our money, but I was so grateful because the other clinic did. They had peer support groups, family advocates. They had so much more help over there for us. So I was glad he referred us. So your doctor can be a huge resource in pointing you the right direction for resources. And then most counties have a Department of Behavioral Health or Department of Mental Health, and they can be great resources. They have a lot of programs. Actually, the clinic that he sent us to, it was a county clinic. And so, yeah, they have like a ton of resources, things that can help you. And I know a lot of people frown on the county. I'm a little biased because I went to nursing school at a county hospital, one of the old school ones where I lived at the hospital on campus for 2 years. So I'm partial to county hospitals. I think they're great. I know they're always not as pretty as a private hospital and they can be a little crowded, but you actually get great care there. Anyway, back to the Department of Behavioral Health. They usually have a lot of resources. And again, if they can't help you, they can point you in the right direction. And then national organizations like NAMI, mentalhealth.gov, SAMHSA is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Then there's National Suicide Prevention Hotline, Veterans Crisis Line. These are all websites that you can Google, and they're all reputable sources. And they have a lot of stuff, and they also usually have 800 numbers that you can call with some of these same people. And then also there's a referral number called, it's 211. It's a national number, but once you tell them where you live, they should be able to provide you with referrals in your community. I never knew about this number until about 3 years ago, but they can be really helpful, and not just on mental health resources. Sometimes, you may need help with transportation or jobs or things like that. They can kind of point you in the right direction as far as that. And then I mentioned NAMI, but I just want to talk about resources that I've gotten from NAMI. NAMI has a ton of resources. They have state chapters, and then there's a national chapter. They have an 800 number. The website is awesome. And then if you ever go to the family to family class, you get a notebook, and in the back of the notebook is a section for resources, and there's a ton of like articles and books to read and websites in that. So that's a great resource in there. Now, I've had some families tell me that they don't have like a local NAMI chapter in their area, or maybe it's inactive, but it's okay. Just contact the national office and they can point you in the right direction. Again, just call them at the 800 number. All right, support. You are not alone. Just another reminder, you're not alone. So this is the third tool of empowerment. And I think one of the first places to start for support is going to support groups. And that was one of the mistakes I made after I went to the NAMI family to family class. I didn't go to support groups, and they suggested that you continue going to support groups. But I think in my mind, it was like a class, a 12-week class. And once I was done with the class, I was done. Even though it was a huge support for me, just being there with other family members and seeing what's going on with them, it was so, so helpful. But I didn't continue. But I started going to support group about 5 years ago, and I'm so glad I did. It's very, very helpful. NAMI offers support groups, and most community behavioral health departments have support groups. Because when you're in a support group, it just makes you feel like you're not alone. That's the biggest thing for me. The other thing is, I think that there's power and unity and community when you're with other people who are going through the same exact thing as you. So support groups are really, really great. A great source of resources. And then the second thing, family, friends, neighbors, and religious organizations. And I know this is kind of difficult because a lot of people, because of stigma, we don't want to tell anyone what's going on. We don't want, some people can be really mean and critical and judgmental, and I know that we don't want to talk about it. That's another thing back to support groups that I like, because no one in there is critical or judgmental. Everybody is just very loving and supportive of each other. But don't underestimate family, friends, neighbors, and religious organizations, because you never know when you're going to need help. And don't try to do this caregiving journey by yourself. It's very difficult, and you may need help. And you never know when you're going to need help. What if your loved one's in the hospital? You may need help with pet sitting or transportation or meals or grocery shopping. And so don't get stuck on, I don't want to tell anyone. If you have to just find a small group of people that you trust, find those people, find someone you can trust that you can help. And you may not need help for like a whole year, but at least in the back of your head, there's someone there who can provide some support for you. And then another source of support is going to see a therapist. When I was growing up, I never heard anybody talk about going to see a therapist. And the only time I heard about it was like on TV, and it was like usually this horrible thing. It was negative. It was talked about in a negative way. And so I didn't hear anything positive about therapy. But I do see a therapist now, and I find it very helpful and comforting to go and talk to someone. Sometimes we just try to hold everything aside and we try to figure it out inside, but that doesn't always work. If you go see a therapist, they can help you address your stress. They can help you address your problems and help you find solutions. And I think that's a lot of it, is trying to help you find solutions, or even help provide you resources. They can help you with all of that. So don't be ashamed or afraid to go see a therapist. Okay, so our last tool of empowerment is self-care. I left this one last on purpose because if you forget everything I said at the beginning, I want you to remember this. This tool is so powerful and it's so empowering. It will help you feel better. It will help you do better. It is a requirement. It is not selfish. And it's a must to accompany you on your caregiving journey in order for you to maintain your peace of mind. And so I just feel like if you don't do this, you're not gonna do well. And practicing self-care will help you maintain your peace of mind. It will help you be a great caregiver without losing yourself in the process, and it will help you smile while doing it. So I wanted it to, to be sure that you remember it. There are two things about self-care that have me a little bit worried. And one of them is that self-care is being talked about so much, like all over social media, all everywhere, self-care, self-care, self-care. And I'm worried that it's going to get watered down and people are going to forget about it and not practice self-care because it's just like, oh, self-care, we talk about that all the time. So I'm really concerned about that because we can't forget about it. It's very important. And the second thing that has me worried is when people do talk about it, we just hear them talking about getting their hair done or getting a mani-pedi or going to get a massage. And those things are great. I love those things too, but they're not going to help you in the long run. They're only going to be a temporary fix, a feel good for today. And so I challenge you to think about the basics of self-care. So right now, my podcast, Caregivers Haven Podcast, we're doing a series called Back to the Basics of Self-Care. And we're talking about nutrition, sleep, exercise, having a positive mindset, and spirituality. Those are, to me, and this is my opinion, those are the basics of self-care. Once you have those basics, that's your foundation. That's what you want to build on. And then you can add those other types of self-care on top of that. But if you build your foundation on those basics, you're going to have a strong foundation that's going to carry you through on this caregiving journey, not just be a temporary fix. For those of you who follow me on Instagram or YouTube on my podcast, you know that I talk about the beach all the time. And that's why I have this picture here, because part of my spiritual self-care is going to the beach. When I go there, I can just be quiet. I can let my mind just relax. I can pray. I can just do whatever I want to. I can get in the water and play and act like a big kid. But this is part of my spiritual practice of self-care, is going to the beach. And self-care is not easy. We need that strong foundation. We need to take care of those basics. You guys have all seen the Snickers commercial. You see what happens when you're not feeding yourself and you get too hungry. And that's the type of thing I'm talking about. Take care of those basics. And so one of the things when we talk about having peace of mind, I think that's probably like a whole nother hour-long conversation. But one of the things that I can talk about today, that you can start today, that will help you, is concentrate on the good. Concentrate on the good of your loved one. Concentrate on the times that they made you smile. Concentrate on the times that they made you laugh. Concentrate on when they're well, because a lot of times we don't concentrate on that. Watching somebody go through psychosis or depression, it can be very traumatic. And so we find ourselves constantly worrying about, is it going to happen again? Or we're doing everything we can to prevent it. And excuse me, so we're concentrating on the bad instead of on the good. And sometimes we do that and 3 years go by and nothing's happened. They've been well for 3 years. And here we were worrying all these years and nothing happened. And so, like I said earlier, caregiving isn't easy. It's draining, it's scary, it's frustrating, it's confusing, it's isolating and lonely, and it causes guilt and hopelessness and helplessness. And so because of that, we have to counteract that. Yes, it can cause all those things, but we can do some things ourselves to help prevent it from from us feeling that way. And a lot, we're doing all this worrying, and maybe I'm just talking about myself, but I worry and I'm trying to prevent all of this. And then my shoulders are tense and I'm getting worry lines, and then I'm having headaches, and my vessel is not full. I'm not good. I'm not able to be a great caregiver because now I'm all stressed out and burnt out and worried. So let's back it up and just flood your brain with the good, flood your brain with love, flood your brain with all the good thoughts, and try to push all that stuff, to the back. I know, I've tried it. It has helped. So this is a picture of my bathroom wall. I have these two quotes taped on there, excuse me. And you guys have heard me talk about it on Instagram or on my podcast, but I have them taped on my wall. So the first one says, self-care is not about self-indulgence, it's about self-preservation. Sounds good, right? But let's unpack that a little bit. I just want to read it to you a little differently. So the definition of self-indulgence is an excessive or unrestrained gratification for one's own appetites, desires, or whims. So like if you say going shopping is part of my self-care, and then you go shopping all the time and you spend your whole entire paycheck on shopping and now you can't pay your bills, that's excessive, right? That's excessive. So we don't want to do that. And then the definition for self-preservation, which I love this, self-preservation means to maintain or keep alive. Another definition states that it's the act or process of keeping something safe from damage or deterioration. So let's read this quote again using these definitions. Self-care is not about overindulging. Self-care is not being excessive. Self-care is about staying alive. Self-care is making sure I'm not damaged or deteriorated. So when I read it like that, Audre Lorde, who wrote this, I think she really wanted us to understand how important self-care is. I mean, to me, that's deep. That's like, I want to be alive. I want to, I don't want to deteriorate. So you have to, it's important to take care of yourself. Self-care is not this, again, it's not going shopping and shopping and getting my nails done and all that. It's not going to keep me alive. But eating well and exercising and sleeping and having spirituality practice, those things will help me stay alive. Those things will help me maintain myself without deteriorating or damaging myself. So that quote, I love that quote. So you guys remember that. The second quote, rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve others from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And that's by Eleanor Brown. So this quote is like, so I just kind of imagine a jar full of water and I'm that jar. And so when I'm doing well, I'm eating well, I'm sleeping well, my jar is full, I'm doing great self-care, I'm doing great care to my loved one, everything's good. But then, maybe I haven't slept, I missed maybe a night of sleep and I missed a few meals and I'm starting to feel tired and I'm starting to feel cranky and things are just being a little bit different. So my jar is like half full. But then now I feel like I'm catching a cold. I feel like I'm getting sick. I end up going to the hospital. Guess what? My jar is empty. But if you're like me, you might find a few little drops in that jar and you just keep pushing yourself. You just keep pushing yourself. And then that's when you like for real end up in the hospital. You end up with a nervous breakdown. You end up with all these things because you did not pay attention. You did not take care of yourself. It can take weeks or days or months or even years, as in my case, before it can happen. But yes, it can happen. Rest and self-care are so important. You can't serve from an empty vessel. You can't. And so my doctor told me that, my therapist told me that a lot of my back pain and back spasms are from years of stress and not taking care of myself. And she said that I'm having somatic symptoms now, which means my stress is coming out as physical symptoms. So we got to take care of ourselves. I wish I had known this sooner, and in a lot of ways I did, because my grandmother told me in my 30s, because I've just always been that go, go, go person. My grandmother told me in my 30s, she said, you need to slow down. Your body's going to tell on you one day. And she was right, because now my body is telling everyone that I didn't take care of myself because I have all these issues with my back. So for you guys, take heed now before it's too late. I'm telling you now. To be careful. You just have to think about yourself sometimes. And a lot of, as caregivers, we don't do that enough because we have to take care of our loved one. That is what we have to do, but we have to understand that it's just as important, it's equal. We have to take care of ourselves just as much as we take care of our loved one. One of the things I like in support group is as we go down our introduction, the last two things they ask us is, how are you doing today? And what do you need today? And a lot of times, a lot of us, we go through our introduction and we're going on and on and on about what's going on with our loved one. And then our facilitator, Jackie Sanchez, and our Francisco, they will gently guide us back to those two questions. but how are you doing today? What do you need today? And I love that, because as caregivers, we forget, sometimes I just forget to have that focus be on me. So as I said, practicing self-care is new to me. I would say in the last probably 5 years, and I wish I had been practicing earlier, but I didn't. My brother and my baby sister have been instrumental in me practicing self-care and having positive energy and just speaking positivity in my life. And I'm glad, because I just, for whatever reason, and I'm a nurse, and a lot of nurses are really bad at this. We just put everybody before us, and nursing is caregiving. We want to help, and I have a strong desire to help people. I have a passion for helping people, but sometimes it works bad on me because then I'm not taking care of myself. So I want to be transparent with you. I have practiced these tools every day. However, I'm a work in progress. I don't get it right 100% every day, but I try every day. It's a priority. I have these on my wall. It's a priority every day for me to practice self-care. And for all of you who don't get it perfectly today, no problem. Just try again tomorrow. I've been trying for almost a year to get to bed consistently by 10 p.m. But I haven't gotten there yet. But it's still a priority. I still try every day. So as long as you're trying, just do your best and keep at it. Keep at it. Keep at it. It'll come. So I hope you have found some of these tools helpful. And I hope that you'll try to use some of them. These are the tools I use to give me peace of mind, to help me on this caregiving journey. These are the tools that I use to not lose myself in the process. These are the tools that I use to smile while I'm on this caregiving journey. So let's summarize what we talked about today. Create that crisis intervention plan for your family. Become a part of your loved one's healthcare team if you're okay with that, if they're okay with you doing that. Educate yourself on the diagnosis and the medications. Find resources that will benefit you and your family. Find support in family, friends, neighbors, religious organizations, and support groups. Practice self-care as you do. And as you do self-care, remember to concentrate on the good. Concentrate on the good of your loved one. Self-care is not a one and done thing, meaning you don't do self-care today and then you're done for the month. No, self-care is every day. It's a continuous journey that you improve upon each and every day. Self-care is forever. We always have to do this. Self-care is life. Self-care is life. Self-care is life. Yes, I'm on auto repeat on that because please understand that. You heard that quote. Self-preservation is maintaining your life. Self-care is self-love. Love yourself and take care of yourself just as much as you love your family member and take care of them. You are important. You can have peace of mind and you can smile as you take care of your loved one. That's all I have for today. Thank you for having me, and I hope that this has helped someone.
Well,
what questions do you have for me?
Well, thank you, Saundra, for your wonderful presentation and really bringing the awareness around caregivers and the need for self-help, and also really giving us all permission to realize it's a work in progress. We all are. So we've opened the floor to some questions, and I have some here for you. First one's a pretty simple one. What platform is your podcast on? I think you have some people that want to listen.
Okay, yeah, so it's on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. Let's see, it's on most of the major platforms, so you can find it there. And then here's how you can find me. So if you want to just listen, you can find it on any of those places: Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor. If you like to watch it, if you're visual, you can find it on YouTube, and it's at Caregivers Haven on YouTube.
Great. Another question here for you, Saundra. What strategies or tips do you have on how to create clear boundaries and establish those self-care routines without guilt?
So just as I said right now, so one of the things when I got those quotes from my support group, a lot of times they have those papers on the table and you can choose whichever one resonates with you And I've had those for a few years, and just understanding that self-preservation, that I have to set those boundaries if I want to continue to live. I have to set those boundaries if I want to continue to take care of my loved one. And so I just figure out, I actually had to start using the calendar and writing times in for different things. And some things are just non-negotiable. So for example, I get up in the morning and I have my devotion. Everyone knows that that's my time. That's the time that I have my devotion. And then I'll deal with breakfast and those things after. And so a lot of times I think once you create the things that you need for your self-care and you decide what those things are, and then just sitting down with your family member and letting them know, on this day I do this, or on this day, this time is my devotion time. This time is the time that I'm gonna have lunch, because on one of my podcasts, I talked about how I did it again. It was 4 o'clock. I had, given everyone their meals, but I had not eaten. I hadn't even drank anything. And it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so one of our guests on the podcast, her suggestion was put your name on the list. So everyone has a to-do list, right? And so that's one way to create your boundaries, is you put your name on the list. And if you have to write feed myself at 9 o'clock, then write that down. But that way it helps you create boundaries. And then if you talk to your family about it, then you don't feel guilty. You've talked about it. And if they say something where you may need to make adjustments, you can make adjustments. But that's one way where you can start creating your boundaries and not feel guilty about it.
Wonderful tip there. In the same tip category, any tips you have on how to remain calm and collected when your family member who has a mental health challenge is in the hospital or some other medical crisis? How do you stay calm in those moments?
So at the beginning, I didn't. 8 years ago, I told you what happened to me with that, that second break. But now I do yoga. I do a lot of meditation. I do, and even with my loved one at night, even before they go to bed, every night I do a shavasana with them, which is a medication, I keep saying meditation that you can do at night just to try to clear your brain. But I really try to go back to those basics, because I try to stop all that skipping meals, not sleeping. I try to make all of those things a priority, and then I'm better able to handle things. I have realized just in the last like a year ago, our loved one and my husband were in the hospital with COVID at the same time. And just going through that and just learning how to reach out for help, reach out for support, calling my prayer partners, calling people instead of trying to deal with everything by myself. Just having, so I would say support, find some type of peaceful practice like meditation or yoga or something like that. Those are the things that have helped me a whole lot. And then making sure that I get the proper sleep, because I was not getting a good amount of sleep.
Great, thank you for those tips. I wonder if you have any suggestions for resources that you've shared with families that around helping them reach out for support.
Yeah, so one of the things that I talked about is don't be afraid to call. Don't be afraid to ask for help. When I first started, when I called NAMI, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know who I was calling. So I think the biggest thing is just make that first step of calling somebody, anybody, just making that phone call. Because you don't know everything that you need to know by yourself. So you're going to have to go out. So don't just stay in, holding everything inside, not telling anybody, because of stigma. You need to go out to either your Department of your health, your doctors. And a lot of times, one of the things that helped me at the very beginning was when we first realized our loved one was having some issues, we couldn't get them to the doctor. And that's how I started going to therapy, because someone who also has a family member, they said, well, then you go to therapy, you go to the doctor. They can help you. They can tell you things to help you help them. And that's one of the ways I started off.
Great. I think we have maybe time for one more quick question, Saundra, and then we'll have to wrap. How do you balance your own professional life and cope with taking care of your loved one at home?
Well, so I retired last year from the hospital. I only have my business now, but for the 8 years that I was working with that, it was difficult. It was difficult, especially if I was at work and I would get a call. Now, um, I don't know what I would have done if I was still on the floor, because when everything happened, I was already in the IT department. And so I had the opportunity to be able to leave if I needed to. I had the opportunity to leave and go to doctor appointments and things if I needed to. So because my job was flexible, but it was hard because you'll be at work with all this stuff going on and then leaving and going home and dealing with that and then maybe coming back. It was difficult. But again, I asked for help from family and friends. I just made sure that I was taken care of. And like I said at the beginning, I wasn't, and I was a mess. It was horrible. I was very, very stressed out. But once I started taking care of myself better, all of those things became easier.
Well, great, Saundra. We're out of time here. Wanted to thank you again for your words of wisdom and your time today. Want to thank everyone for joining. If you have any questions on the content, please feel free to reach out to Saundra at her uh, different social media outlets. You can see there on the screen. If you have any questions or concerns about today's event, please email nami.california@namica.org. Um, we invite you
You
to
know what,
take,
Andrew? I'm sorry.
yes,
I did want to say my website, caregivershaven.com, is on maintenance right now. It should be back up next week, just FYI.
thanks for the heads up. Thank you, Saundra. We invite you to take the evaluation survey that will be sent to you shortly at the end of after our conference. Your feedback again is super helpful as we plan for the future. Want to remind everyone to take some breaks for yourself and engage in that self-care. Again, thank you, Saundra, for all your sage advice today. Folks, feel free to leave this session and move on to the next part of your agenda, and hope to see you all at the next session. Take care
Thank
now.
you for
Have a
having
great
me.
rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye-bye.